Hello everyone, Sean Bowden here again, and I am here to take you through the second workshop out of three in my Microsoft OneNote workshop series. Last time you learned how to set up your OneNote notebooks for your class notebooks, adding students, adding tabs, and what every function was within the different versions of OneNote. Well, today we're going to take that a little bit further, and I'm going to show you some stuff that is a bit more advanced that could help you maximize all the capabilities of Microsoft OneNote. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start by showing you guys to refresh your memory of how to find the notebooks that you've created again. The easiest way is to go online to your favorite web browser. I prefer Google Chrome. And you need to be within your Microsoft OneNote. Now normally your dashboard would be the main thing that you go to, and you would see all of your apps here. And of course you would go to OneNote. When you go to OneNote, it'll pop up and it'll show all your different notebooks. I have several, as you can see, but you'll pick the one that you want to work with. I'm working with my 5th grade 2018-19 class. And when I open it up, it depends on what tab you were open to last time, but all of your sections that you have, or tabs I call them, but they're called sections, as you can see down below, will be over here on the far left. And here I have kind of created my own home page. By default, you'll see these instructional pages unless you delete them. I deleted mine and I made my own. So I got Mr. Bowden's 5th grade class. Keep calm because we're an awesome class. And I have also created over here in the pages within each section, you can add pages by hitting this plus button. I created a rules section also for that. Now, just to kind of show you the different within the different other versions of OneNote, I'm going to go now to the OneNote 2016. OneNote 2016 is set up quite differently than this. Instead of the tabs being over here on the left, you're going to see that the tabs are actually over up top. A lot of people prefer this because this is the most common version used in the past with OneNote, but it still functions the same way. Over here are my pages, my sections though, like I said, or my tabs are up here at the top. So I've got my students, my collaboration space, and things like that. The big difference here is whenever I click on a tab or something to get back to my other sections, I have to click this back arrow. With the online version, I don't need to do that. Because if I go into collaboration space, here, it takes a minute to load, but I go there, I don't have to click a back button to get back to my other tabs. Now, for those of you that haven't had a chance to look yet, there is another version of OneNote, and they call this OneNote for Windows. It is going to have a dark purple, newer looking icon like this down at the bottom. That is OneNote 2016. It is an older icon, so that's how you're going to be able to tell the big difference. But this OneNote is made specifically for Windows, and it's set up much more like the online version. As you can see, the tabs are over here on your far left, and everything you click in and out of, it goes a bit more quickly than the online version, which is why it's probably preferable for the most part to that. Alright, with that being said, what are we going to learn this new today? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to really dig into this collaboration space, because this is where you're going to have the most exciting experiences for your kids, where they can work together, where you can also set a lot of very clear rules for them, and you can limit how much access they have. So we're going to talk about how to do that first. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you guys how to create groups in your collaboration space, because what I've done in mine, just to kind of show you, I have my first tab, which is my default one. I've made a couple of different things. So I had them do a little feedback session, but then I made a place called the Hangout, and I typed in kind of instructions. This place is reserved for you guys to talk with one another. This is where I just kind of give them rules for talking. And so as you can see, my kids have definitely clicked anywhere they wanted, and I told them, I said, put your name before you talk. So it's kind of like a little chat room, but not quite the real chat room where they're exposed to all the dangers of being fully online out in the cyber world, but they're within their own little exclusive cyber world, if you will. So they were able to click and add talk with each other, and also if they ever do anything that is inappropriate, I do have the ability to track what they say. And if they do forget to put their name with the different versions of OneNote, I'm going to kind of show you guys a little bit later how to track when and what they say as well. But without that being said, what I wanted to do for one of my projects is I wanted to group kids by different sections, but only certain kids could go to those sections. That way, I knew that not the other kids were not allowed to go and mess with what they were doing. How do you do that? Well, as you can see, my kids were doing research on Serena Williams. This is for Black History Month. And I had a group A, a group B, a group C, and a group D. So the first thing I did is I had to go to the section button. And when you click this section button, it's the same when you do the online version. So I'm going to go up to the collaboration space, and here you see the same group, Serena Williams. And I had to go first to create a new section. And when I did that, you could do it here and create the sections within OneNote first. But I'm going to show you a bit of an easier way to do that. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to go to this Class Notebook tab. In Class Notebook tab, you have an option, that says Manage Notebooks. So I'm going to click Manage Notebooks. And over here, I've got to find the notebook that I'm working within right now. That's my AC Math. Here's the one I want to work with. So as you can see here, this is kind of where I can either add a section or delete a section if I wanted to. Like if I didn't want class notes, I could delete it or add new ones if I wanted to. We're going to talk a bit about the teacher only section group, which I really enjoy having. And then it says lock collaboration space. If you ever want to lock kids from being able to edit it for like a little while because you're doing some investigating, this is a good option to use, and you can also unlock it anytime. But this is where we can actually give permissions to certain groups on certain sections. Collaboration space permissions. So I'm going to click this. And as it opens up, it sometimes takes a minute. All right, here we go. So these are the sections I've already created. So if you've already created sections, you can go and you can take students off of a certain section or add them back on if you wish. If you want to make a brand new section, instead of having to go back to the OneNote notebook here, you can just simply click Add Section. You do that, you name the section, and then here's where it gets really fun. You can edit who has permission to do this right through here. So as you can see, all my students' names are there. I can pick who I want to have to be able to edit content and read what's on there. If I wanted to go to a tab that I've already created, it's the same process. So let's say Serena Williams Group A, I want to change which students I want to give permission to. As you can see, the ones that I gave permission to have their boxes checked, and the ones that I don't want to go into that group, they don't have their boxes checked. And then you have another option here too that says give read-only access to students. This is where they can only read what's on there. They can't edit any of the content. Well, for this particular assignment, I wanted them to be able to do research and add information to it because that's what they were doing for that project. So this is just a really neat way to kind of limit who has permission to go into what tabs, or excuse me, sections. So you can do this at any time you want, but it's only within sections. To be clear, sections are the tabs over here on the left, or if you're using OneNote 2016, it's going to be the tabs up at the top, or the sections at the top. But it's still the same kids. Now, can you edit it any other way besides doing it online? You can. You can go to Class Notebook here, and I can go to the same option, Manage Notebooks, but watch what happens. It still takes me online no matter what. So the online version is the only place where you can edit this collaboration space permissions. Another thing you can do, if you really wanted to kind of limit their access even further, and you wanted to be sure that the kids were following the correct protocol, you could lock each tab with a password. How do you do passwords? Well, I have tried to figure out a way to do passwords within OneNote Online, and from what I've seen, there just simply is no way to do it. I've tried going to the same sections that are in the other versions, and there is no way to actually add a password. But I'm going to show you how to add a password within OneNote 2016 and OneNote for Windows. Let's start with OneNote 2016. OneNote for 2016 is quite easy. There are actually two ways to do it with OneNote 2016. You can go to the History tab, or excuse me, the Review tab, not the History tab, and there is a section that says Password. And so right now, I am on the Serena Williams Group B. So if I wanted to put a password on that, even for those 9 students that already have permission. If I want to set a new password, I would click that, set password, enter one, and then make sure that I remembered it. And because if you don't remember it, it says if you lose your password, OneNote cannot recover your data. So be very careful. Make sure if you're going to do this, you write down all the passwords as you go. So that's one way to add a password in OneNote 2016. Another way you can do it is by simply right clicking on the tab and go to password protect this section. You can do that same exact function. Now in OneNote for Windows, which is the newer version, if I wanted to password protect Serena Williams Group B, I do it the same way that I did. There is no review tab up here. The functions are still a bit more limited in OneNote for Windows. You've got more in OneNote for Windows than you do in OneNote Online, but the most features by far are still within OneNote 2016. I know that Microsoft has said that eventually OneNote 2016 is going the way of the dodo, but as for right now, it is still the most full-featured version. So, but with OneNote for Windows, if you want to password protect, you do the same thing. You right-click on the tab or section you want to protect, and you go to password protection, and then you click it, and you go to add a password, and then it's the same rules though. If you forget this password, you basically have locked yourself out of this section forever. So don't do it if you don't remember. Make sure you always write down your passwords. But this can be really good, especially if you're really trying to make sure that the legitimate people are only allowed to manage this particular section. So that's how you do password protection. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about keeping up with what the kids write, and just to make sure that everybody's following the right directions and stuff. As you can see, whenever a student adds information to it, it usually shows their initials on the side, and so if it does not, this is OneNote for Windows. If I want to figure out who it is that did this, I look here and I see that this child on 2/6/2019 added this information. And over here, same thing. If I right click here, I can see that this child edited that information. What's really interesting about OneNote for Windows is this is the least specific version for history. This is the only place where I can see when and who wrote that particular part. In my Hangout, I have to click on each individual box. I can see this student did this on 3/14, this student did this on 3/5, and things like that. Now, one thing I really prefer, if you're really trying to figure out who wrote something when, the best version is by far OneNote 2016, because here I can see over here now it says that on the side without having to right click, it tells which child, and it'll also pop up. If you hover over it, it will pop up what time it happened and which child did it when. And if I click the letters, it'll even tell me the child's name and everything. So if I want to know a little bit more information, there's actually a history tab at the top, and I can go and I can figure out which kids have actually contributed to this notebook as a whole by find by author. This is the only version of OneNote where you can find by author. So if I click find by author, I can go over here to the right now and it tells me which child did what when. So if I go here 11/29/2018, I can see that this child completed these 2 assignments and wrote out some little notes with her drawing tool. So I think that is just a really cool feature. You can go and see when and where they did it. And even further, if you go to history, you can actually go to page versions, and you can click on the different page versions, and you can take a look at when these things were edited, which I thought was really cool. So, and it'll tell you if it's really old. It'll tell you that, hey, this has been too long of a time, and things like that. So history, if you want to keep up with your kids, that's one way to do it. I will say though, in the online version, there is something you can do with history as well. So I'll just kind of show you. If you go to view and you go to this option right here that says show authors, it will pop up all the authors over here on the right. So it does give you some degree of being able to see who wrote a particular part within your collaboration space. So that about covers how you can track who contributes and types on your different OneNote sections. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is the teacher only section. So when you were on the managed notebooks section earlier, there was a teachers only section. And as you can see, I have enabled it on this notebook, but I do not have it enabled on this notebook. All you have to do to enable it is click enable teacher only section. And once you do that, it will make a teacher only section, and it kind of tells you that, hey, this is kind of the place, a private place to kind of set up things for distribution. So one thing that I wanted to do for my distribution was to create some flipped lessons, but this is where I can edit it and stuff without distributing it to my students and make sure it's perfect. So I did one on dividing fractions. I found a YouTube video that told them how to divide fractions. I created a graphic here that showed them keep, change, flip to change it to multiplication, flip the second number, and then multiply, and then solve. And I gave them a question to answer to go with it. So the question is how do I distribute this to my students once I am done? Well, this is a page. These are sections. If I wanted to distribute a page, instead of just, I would go to class notebook up here at the top. The same thing for the online version. If I was on the online version, I would find that exact same page, and I would go to class notebook, and I would go to distribute page, not distribute section. If you distribute a section, that means I'm going to distribute everything in this tab. But if I'm making just a page for them to solve for a flip lesson or whatever it is you're trying to do, what this does, and I don't really prefer doing this on the online version. I think the OneNote for Windows version is going to be probably your best bet, or the 2016. And 2016 works the same way, by the way. So if I were to go to teacher only and I go to my flip lesson and dividing fractions, I'm going to go to class notebook and I'm going to go to distribute page. Well, what happens once I do that? Well, I'm going to click distribute page, and then it's going to say right here, do I want to put it in class notes, handouts, homework, social studies, or student creations? These are the standard tabs that every student has in my class notebook. Well, depending on which one I want it to go to, I'm going to click it. I did this one for homework, and I click distribute. And another cool thing is if I wanted to put this on a different notebook I had, I would click the cross notebook distribution option. And then here I can even put it by certain students, to individuals. If I wanted, like, let's say 3 or 4 of my kids to do this particular page for homework, I could pick the individual students that I want to distribute it to, which is a very cool thing to do. Now, it's the same way over here on the OneNote for Windows 10. You go to distribute page, and the only thing now is, as you can see, I can distribute the page, and it's going to pop over here. It's going to give you some options, and it's going to let me pick a certain tab: class notes, handouts, homework, which are the ones that every student has. But if you notice, I don't have specific students I could do it with. That feature, I believe, is only available in OneNote 2016. If I do the same thing over here, as you can see, there's only 2 options. The individual option is only available in the full-featured OneNote 2016. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, outside of the collaboration space, what are some other things I can do in OneNote? Well, in OneNote, what's interesting, as you know, if you create a new section in a different page, let's say that I wanted a kid to do a particular science project, so science project, and I wanted them to be able to work right on the page. Well, if I was going to insert a file and I wanted them to do it right on the page, instead of file attachment, the file attachment, when you add it, it adds an icon for the item. And that means that they could download it, work on it, and then they could save it on their own computer, and then they could submit it back to OneNote, but they couldn't work directly on the screen, which is a lot of steps really for them to do the same thing that I could do by doing file printout. File printout, on the other hand, I can put any kind of file I want on here with file printout. So if I wanted them to do, let's say, this writing prompt here, and let's see, right now is inserting the document. And sometimes it takes a minute for this to do this. All right, there we go. And so now, right here on the page, my students can work on this on the page. And so that's a really cool thing to do if you wanted them to be able to write directly on the page. So they could go, they could draw on it, they could type on it. All they'd have to do is simply click and they could, oh, actually, excuse me, click underneath it and they could start typing. So that's a really good thing about inserting as a printout. And the other good thing is, hey, it's here up here as an attachment as well. And if I wanted the kids to be able to do that and have them download it and print it, they could do it that way as well. So sometimes it's better to have it as a printout on the screen rather than just inserting it as a document. But it's whatever you think is best for whatever project you're doing. And this kind of leads to, if you're just trying to use OneNote as a place, let's say you go to your content library, and as you can see here, I have multiple things. I'm just kind of putting all my writing prompts in one section. This is the files as attachments option. So if I wanted to build my library over time, this is a great way to do it, as long as you don't ever delete your notebook. But if you wanted to, like, let's say, use this same content library on a different notebook, what's actually really cool about this is I could send this to a different notebook. So if I go to the move or copy section here, if I right click on a section and I wanted to move this to another notebook with all these same files, I would click move or copy, and as you can see here, all of my notebooks are here. So if I wanted it on a different notebook, that's all I would have to do. I would click that and I would maybe put it in one of the sections here. And what I would do is I would, instead of move, I would click copy. And right now it's working in the background, copying all this exact same stuff to that notebook. So that's a really, really cool feature. So hopefully you have learned a lot about the collaboration space, the difference between adding files as printouts versus adding files as attachments, and transferring pages from one notebook to another. And hopefully also you've learned a thing or two about keeping up with the history of how often your students edit their files and their comments within OneNote. So it's a great tool for that. It's a great tool for collaboration, and sky's the limit for what you figure out. I hope that you stay tuned for our third workshop session. I'm going to actually introduce Microsoft Teams and OneNote within Microsoft Teams and how you can use that to further expand your collaboration. Until next time, we'll see you later.